tonight and helping you become more informed voters. I'd also like to thank Tim from Who's Trying Sound for providing tonight's sound, for the VCR staff, Val Olson and Celia Goodyear for helping get all this together. And I want to go ahead and we're going to do this pretty simply, kind of as we've done in the past. I have 4 questions, and then I will go ahead and give each of the candidates 5 minutes afterwards to talk about whatever they want to talk about, if they want to respond to previous statements or their own philosophies. So I'll start with introducing our candidates here, starting at my right, your left. We have Councilman Kieran McManus, who's running for mayor. We have Mayor Rod Woodbury, who's running for re-election, and we want to also wish Mayor Woodbury and his wife Leslie a happy anniversary tonight. Then we have Councilman Rich Schumann, James Howard Adams, Claudia Bridges, and Peggy Levitt. So without any further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. And they will each have 3 minutes to answer each of the questions.
Could you identify who's running against who?
You know, everybody else is running for city council.
I see, so they're not running
There are 2 seats. We have 2 incumbents, 2 challengers for those seats.
who are they incumbents?
Rich Schumann and Peggy Levitt. So our first question here, and we'll start with Councilman McManus and then go down this way. In the past few years, Boulder City has increased the size of its staff and its overall operating expenses. Do you feel these additions have been worthwhile? If so, why? If not, what types of changes would you like to see going forward?
Well, thank you, and thank everyone for attending tonight. Regarding the increase in staff that we have had over the past couple of years, we are now back to the level that we were at prior to the Great Recession. So I know we have gotten some stories written, some things on social media about the vast number of new employees, but really we're within the same range that we were prior to the recession. So we've been trying to get some of the positions back that we had before, as well as having identified some new needs. There have been a few of the positions that were proposed that I was against. Some of those were not accepted. Some of them, the other council members did approve those. But the majority of positions that have been added, especially in areas like our finance department and public safety, I think are for the benefit of our community. If you look at some of the financial reporting that we had in the past years, it was very difficult to determine where money was, where it was being spent. And I think that by having additional people added to our finance department, I believe there's been a total of 5 new people added in that department, I think it's worthwhile for us to know that. They manage $70 million a year in revenue. And having just 4 or 5 people trying to take care of all of that, I don't believe that resulted in a benefit for our city. So again, new positions have been added there. We've added 3 new positions for the police department, 3 new positions for the fire department. And again, I think that those are worthwhile. For many years, the person who was doing our dispatching at night was all alone there. Last I heard, people need lunch breaks, bathroom breaks, things like that. That was unfair to that person, and it was also a danger to the city if that person wasn't available or maybe was on a different call when another emergency came in. So that was one of the positions that was added in the police department. We've also added 3 more positions to the fire department. The numbers actually were down a little bit this year from previous years, but with the bypass going in, I'm sure you're probably all aware of the number of fatalities that we've had there on the bypass. That is stretching our emergency response teams even further from the city. So again, I think that there are positions that we could do without. and I voiced my opposition to those. But overall, I believe we've done a good job in making sure that we spend the money wisely for the benefit of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for wishing me happy anniversary. I noticed my wife's not here tonight yet. We may be in for a divorce here pretty soon doing this on our anniversary, but happy Mother's Day to everybody. I think this particular question, we have a couple of questions that focus on new positions, and this one in particular focuses on past positions, which I presume is primarily focused on last year's positions. 13 new full-time positions last year, as well as some part-time positions. And among those positions were some utilities positions, which I believe were necessary to handle our aging infrastructure, as well as the ongoing collections of the utilities. Police, by virtue of more cops, was necessary. We're kind of mandated to do that. But in particular, I agree with Councilman McManus on the finance positions. We had several finance positions, and I'll get to that in a second, which I believe brought us a great return on investment. We also had a new communications manager last year to replace our old PIO. And that particular position has been fantastic in terms of increasing our transparency, getting the word out to the newspapers and other media outlets. And also we had our new economic development director that was in. In doing that, we repurposed a lot of internal dollars and ended up not spending that much for all those positions. So to the tune of $150,000 to $200,000 for all of those new positions, because we were able to find efficiencies and bring those already budgeted dollars to bear on this. The return on investment in terms of get what you pay for is we've found a savings of approximately $2.2 million in this past year. You could quibble over the numbers, but when you compare $200,000, let's say liberally, to the $2.2 million in savings, it's phenomenal. And I think that we get the benefit of that. And as Councilman McManus indicated, we're getting back to our pre-recession employment levels. And so among those savings, we were able to, especially in the finance department, we were able to find $120,000 in state funds that were available, that we got back from the state, that were just sitting out there. We worked our investment portfolio and got over $150,000 in investment returns on that. $1.3 million in contract savings as well, and some big projects like the Arizona Street project. Our new contracts manager, our new purchasing manager, we were able to find those. In addition to savings in the golf courses by combining those and other things like that. So I believe these positions have been a great benefit to the city, and you always have to balance it and be careful you don't go too far, but I think that's valuable for us.
Well, thank you for having me tonight. Thank you for all taking time out of your evening to be here. This first question, I kind of think it goes along with the second question too. We'll try to do our best here to address it. I do support the changes. I was there supporting those changes and voting for those changes while serving on council and being presented with those changes. So, it started with a city manager a couple of years ago and that hiring, and in the form of government that we have, it's a council and manager form of government. And I put a lot of trust and a lot of faith into that form of government, and when those positions get recommended to me, I tend to go with the recommendation, and I think that's how I handled all these new positions that were being hired or that were being added. One thing that was presented to us a lot during those meetings was the concept of budget neutral and even budget positive. What you have to realize is that sometimes we outsource a lot of things in Boulder City, and those particular tasks, when you bring them in-house, can save a lot of money. So although you have to hire somebody to do something, you also make the job of contracting that position out go away. So I found the majority of the new hires to be budget neutral. The other The other compelling fact to me when we were kind of going through this was some of the efficiencies that can be created within different departments. Like the finance department and having a budget manager and having people, a purchasing manager, I think was one of the positions. And, you know, that person's job is to specifically save us money on things that we purchase. So although we were adding new positions that come with a cost, in my eyes, over the long run, we were adding more efficiencies to City Hall, adding more services to the residents of Boulder City, and making a lot of budget neutral or even budget positive changes. So I did support a lot of those new hires. And again, I take the position of putting a lot of faith into our city manager and working with him to make these hires that they recommend. And a lot of these new hires, all of them actually come from the department heads. If you understand how it's set up, these department heads talk about what they need and they bring it to the city manager, and eventually it comes to the city council. So I am very much in support of all the department heads that we have working at City Hall. I think they do a great job. I think we have an unbelievable staff. I think we have a great city manager who's running the ship like it needs to be run. So I put a lot of faith into him. I will say that, you know, I told him at the council meeting that some of these, the latest ones to be hired would be the first ones to go, if it comes to that. So my thoughts, thanks.
So I certainly would like to believe that the new hires and the new expenditures that the city is having has been to the benefit of the city. I wouldn't like to think that our city manager or department heads are making unnecessary requests of the city council, which I don't think that they are. When we're talking about the staffing needs of the city, we need to have the goals of not reaching just for the bare minimum. Our goal should be to maximize efficiency. We want to make sure that the services that the city is providing to the citizens are both reliable, they're done responsibly, and they're done in a timely manner. I think the biggest threat to that efficiency is not necessarily the size of the staff, but it's when we have the high turnover rate that we have seen recently in City Hall. In the last 2 years, last couple of years, we now have a new city manager, a new city attorney. We have a new community development director. We have a new public works director. We're now on our second finance director. When you have that many resignations and or terminations at the highest level of city government, you have a problem that needs to be addressed. I do want to commend a lot of the new department heads that we have, because they have had to hit the ground running. You know, there is a lot of catch-up that needs to be done, and it is not easy to move into an environment that has had such seismic shifts. So what do I want to see change? I want to make sure that we're developing a culture at City Hall based on accountability. We need to make sure that our employees, if they are witnessing abuses of authority or inappropriate behavior, that they're reporting it. We need to make sure that they will not fear retaliation for speaking out. Ultimately, a lot of this will fall under the purview of the city manager, but it is up to the city council to be responsible for making sure that city staff is run effectively and it is run responsibly. And that is what I would like to do on council. Thank you.
I reviewed the numbers and find this to be a loaded question. Actually, questions 1 and 2 are very similar. First of all, the number of staff, I did a lot of calculating. The number of staff averaged 168 between the years 2000 and 2010. And after that time, during the recession, the number decreased, most likely from attrition. At a high, there were 174. And now we have 176. And I don't wish to second guess the needs of these departments. And it doesn't seem like an extraordinarily high number compared to the past. We have paid off the outstanding debt minus the raw water line. We have also been spending on salaries to meet about our revenues and leaving the necessary reserves, meaning suddenly there's more money and now we have more expenditures, more employees. With respect to hiring and reviewing the expenses of the different departments, comparing 2019 to 18, there seems to be good reasons for the increase in staff in some cases. The strongest reason I have seen has been considering the budget in full, as the others have talked about. Simply considering the amount of overtime administrated earlier. I noticed there were years where overtime was 1,000% over the year before, and also the use of outside contractors. In addition, some of these positions are supplemented with funding from outside the general fund. For the most part, I see that these additions have been worthwhile, and I found the numbers relatively easy to justify, especially in finance, public safety, and public works. So, in terms of changes in overall operating expenses, there's a significant increase in expenses at the top level. With respect to the 2019 budget, the city's manager expenses are up 54%. City clerk's office up 61%, and the finance department up 69%. Some of these expenses are a result of professional costs in these departments and increases in salary and employees, some of which are consultants, which we seem to employ on a regular basis. And I'm hard-pressed to say whether or not these are worthwhile because I'm not involved in the individual departments. So what do I suggest? That there be a cap on employment numbers and costs as we have an ordinance on growth and don't plan significant increases. That increases in staff requests be seriously reviewed. And that we have to remember that we have this growth ordinance and that we have to be careful not to constantly need to increase our budget.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Boulder City Review for hosting this, and I thank you all for coming. As has been mentioned, there are actually two questions with respect to new positions. So just in the interest of time, I'm going to address the 2018 budget in my first question and 2019 positions in my second answer. First of all, Claudia mentioned a little bit about operating expenses, but in any budget, operating expenses go up from year to year. I mean, you see that in your own household budget. Things cost more, and it's just a normal thing that operating goes up. I sit on many other boards and oversee their budgets, and that is very common in any budget that I've been involved in. It's interesting that some departments actually cut costs, and I was curious to hear you say that the city clerks was up so much, because I think in the 2019 budget, the city clerk actually budget was. So sometimes departments can cut their budgets. Other times, departments take on additional duties, and so their budgets may go up. But in my mind, there's nothing extraordinary about the operating expenses that have expanded. As has been mentioned, the whole point of adding staff was to implement cost efficiencies in the city government. More and more has been expected of our staff with respect to accountability and transparency. And with these changes, the staff is able to provide the level of service, productivity, and accountability that is required of them. With the new positions in 2018 budget cycle, as has been stated, they weren't really new positions. They were positions that had been not filled. And so there were some positions, part-time positions that were made full-time positions. There were some positions that were reclassified. And then there also they were shifted to departments that needed new positions. And I think one of the best things that came out of these new positions and the reorganization was separating out our utilities department from the public works department. So we have two separate departments now, and that certainly has created more efficiency and transparency. Other positions that were added in 2018 that I think you can see a recognizable difference is our communications manager, The city is being far more proactive in getting information out, as has been said in the Department of Finance, and the new positions in the utilities, and then the Economic Development Coordinator. I think my time is out.
Okay, well, since the mic is down that way, we'll start with you, Peggy, and work our way back. And yes, this next question is related, but slightly different. It is, the city implemented 15 new positions last year and has allocated 13 new positions in the budget for this year. What are your thoughts on the salaries and benefit packages for the city's top employees, or the top city employees? And do you feel these positions and costs are necessary for a city of this size at its current city employee count?
Okay, thank you. So in this answer, I'm going to address the 2019 budget. So there are, the question says there are 13 new positions. Well, actually, there are 4 new positions because, again, positions, I'll talk about that more. Some of these new positions that were created by bringing in-house contracts that we're contracting out, primarily in the Utilities Department and the Public Works Department. But first of all, I want to talk about 2 new positions. One of these, both of these are aligned with our strategic plan, which the council unanimously agreed upon. One of the positions is in historic preservation, and the other, again, is in finance. I believe that both of these positions are necessary. Historic preservation, as we all know, is in the forefront of everybody's minds now in Boulder City. And for the first time since I've been on council, we are finally positioned to put some resources behind it. I think it's important to have a salaried position in the city so we can hire a respected professional in historic preservation to help coordinate all of the efforts that are going on in Boulder City, and so that we can have a unified vision going forward. And again, the budget manager position again helps us with our accounting process. This position also will implement transparency software, allowing citizens to review budgetary information online. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that Public Works and the Utilities Department have to contract out for construction management and other services all the time. This is very costly. Sometimes the construction management costs on one contract can equal the amount of money it would take to fill one full-time employee. So the advantage to having employees rather than contractors, that it's not only cheaper in the long run, but it's valuable to have employees who have institutional knowledge of our utility systems. Also, it's easier to hold our own employees accountable. The question is this sustainable? So the costs have been projected out over the next 5 years, and it is sustainable because contract costs are exceeding our in-house costs. The other 2 positions are in more COPS, which is funding that we get from the state. In order to qualify for more COPS, you have to provide more COPS. So we have had to replace 2 officer positions to get this very necessary funding. With respect to salaries and benefit packages, I think our salaries are commensurate with or less than what is being paid in Henderson, Las Vegas, and North Las Vegas, which is our direct market competition.
Okay, same question. First of all, it's talking to people and what I've read online and on Facebook and in direct conversation with people. There's a lot of assumptions, too many employees, retiring, where costs are out of control. And it was really a pleasure to sit down and work with a lot of these numbers and figure that it's really not as ominous as some people have made it out to be, at least in my opinion. I think these numbers can be misleading. For this year, the request is for fewer full-time positions and a greater number of these budget-neutral positions. In some cases, we're replacing, like you said, outside services with city employees, and some of these positions are required and also are paid for partially with outside funds, say from utility funds, in addition to money out of the general fund. While contract employees do a job, and it seems like the job would be better met by a full-time employee, it is important to look at the long-term cost of an employee who may not be needed on a full-time basis. Next, I think we pay a very significant salary to our top city employees. Our city clerk, city manager, and city attorney make salaries consistent with Henderson, which has over 300,000 residents. In their defense, we pull from the same labor market, and in Henderson they have a significant support staff. However, we still only have a little shy of 16,000 residents and most likely a quite lighter workload. I think, though, we have made our bed, so to speak. We have these employees, and we have to evaluate whether they're doing the job we've hired them to do. It's a productivity issue, and it's a qualitative issue. I think that that judgment has to come from council and from other city managers. Going forward, we have to think about growing reserves, growing our growth fund, cutting costs, maybe the possibility of caps on expenses, caps on how many employees we should have on population, based on population, caps on department budgets. We have a controlled growth ordinance and won't have the growth that our neighbors have. Economically, we have to balance today's need with fluctuating financial markets, which may have a huge effect on these capital improvement projects and property values, hence property taxes. Today's market tanked. Do we have the necessary resources? Okay.
So as has been mentioned, when the recession hit, Boulder City responded by eliminating a number of positions. Over time, as our financial health has recovered, we have begun to reinstate some of those positions. Others have been redefined with new job titles, new descriptions. And we're currently at about parity with where we were before the recession hit, and I think that's a good thing. What we're talking about now is growing on beyond that. In some instances, I think that it is the smart and responsible thing to do, as has been mentioned before also. We have budget positive positions. Jobs that were being contracted out before, we can now move that work in-house, which can provide savings to our city. I do have some concerns with some of the new positions that have been proposed, but I don't have the time necessarily to get into the nitty and gritty with some of my critiques. What I would like to talk about, though, is where that money is coming from and how it's being spent. How many times have you heard the idea that, well, we can use the solar lease revenues to address that issue, or we can use those revenues to address this issue? But the truth is we can't, because as soon as those lease revenues go online, they go right into our general fund, and they are found a new home very quickly. We don't have the time to consider other options. I believe that any new lease revenues from the solar fields need to be felt by the community. We need to know that they're being spent. And I don't think that necessarily just hiring new positions constantly is a way that many people are going to feel that that's being effective. We need to be addressing our infrastructure needs. We need to be addressing maintenance needs right now, and I think that should be our priority. I think our city is doing fine. I'm not against having new positions where that job is necessary and where it is essential. But I also don't think that we need to be growing much larger before we address some of our upkeep issues. Thank you.
So I do support the new positions. Again, voted for those positions, went through those salaries and expense and benefit packages, negotiated those with those different employees that came on to do that. So I will just leave it at that. I think this is a fiscal responsibility issue, and it's an overall budget picture. As Mr. Adams just pointed out, it's how we spend the money and where the money comes in. It's not just for salaries and benefits, but it's where we allocate funds, and that's That's the job of your city council that you elect us to do. And that's the job that we've been doing for the past, or I've been doing for the past 4 years. Anyone who's on council has been. And as we look at moving forward and using solar lease revenues and the capital improvement fund and our aging utility infrastructure, these are the forefront issues of this election. To be quite frank with you, I think the question should be more about utilities. I think if we were to focus in on one thing, and I won't get focused on it here with my last minute and a half, but this question would be much more served talking about utilities, utility rates, capital needs in the utility funds, and how we manage those finances. That's what we need to be talking about. And I plan to talk about those. Probably not tonight, but you will hear from me on Facebook and other places where I'm going to post some positions on utilities, utility rates, because every day that goes by in this campaign, that's what I hear people talking about is utilities and utility funds. And I don't think it's appropriate for us to not be addressing that issue. And I would encourage everyone to make sure you're asking questions of all the candidates and see where they stand on that, see what they know about that, see where their experience lies in that, and ask yourself who's best to responsibly manage our finances as a city. That's what I'm looking for. Thanks.
Thank you. So it's easy to look at a question about positions in the city and just say, oh, I see 13 new positions, or I see 7 new positions, and just kind of look at it in isolation. But you really need to understand the whole story behind it. And we spend a lot of time every year in our budget cycle asking questions about these positions, figuring out if they're necessary. You do put a little bit of faith into your staff every year because they come back with budget proposals. They know each department knows its department very well and what its needs are. It looks at past year's budgets and looks at projects coming up, services, programs, and we get all that information. We spend months trying to digest that and figure out these positions. And honestly, at the end of the day, we're concerned mostly about results, the net results, not so much about just whether it's one position or another position. I won't get into all the details because it's already been stated, but we get a lot of cost savings out of these. And every year, when the budget comes back to us the following year, we're going to look at that and decide, did we get positive results out of this? Did we get neutral results? Did we get negative results? And that determines a lot about how we, whether we add new positions or don't add new positions. The point has been made that we do compete with the Las Vegas market, and that's true. Sometimes we like to get compared to Fallon or Ely or something like that. Well, we're not Fallon, we're not Ely. We're a lot different. We are, in terms of the size of our city, we're over 200 square miles. We have all of these solar facilities, and we have our own utilities that most cities in Nevada don't have, and so you have to factor in all of those things as well. The fact is also that you have these positions in other cities that are nearby that are paying often 15, 20, 25% more than we do. And so just one recent example in Public Works is we had an employee give notice, and you can name names and debate over whether this employee is a good employee or a bad employee, but the notice was given because he's got a higher paying job at Southern Nevada Water Authority, and it's 15% higher starting. So he ends here 15% less than he started. And that's been a recurring issue with fire departments and others. We compete with them and we lose people every year for those very reasons. There are efficiencies built into what we've accomplished. I believe that you'll see a substantial saving, just like the $2 million from last year. I think you're going to see hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in savings because we're bringing some of the public works positions in-house. And so, but we're going to reassess that on an annual basis.
Well, I think we've all spoken about the need for some new employees. A concern that I have, though, this question is a little bit different. because it does ask about the amount that's being paid. And the concern that I have when we look at any organization is what are the motivations for management to look for cost efficiencies across their employees. And a problem that I believe we have is all of our employees, whether they're in management or not, have been getting a 3% wage increase over the last 3 years, and we still have 2 years left to go on that. I think it's not efficient for organizations to do that. Management should be evaluated based on how they're doing. Their job is to evaluate the personnel that report to them, and they often get fixed increases. But managers should be evaluated based on what value they're delivering. And I think it's a disincentive to tell those managers, well, we're going to negotiate something, or actually, you go negotiate something, and that will apply to you as well. That often is a way that you get runaway salary increases, because everybody's getting that same increase. So I think that's something we really need to look at in this city, is that we evaluate our managers based on what they're delivering. With some of our new hires, the city attorney, for instance, the previous city attorney had been here for 19 years and was somewhere in the range, I believe, of $110,000 per year. That salary went to $170,000, and then the city attorney came to council this year and said, well, I need a full-time deputy named for my department. Okay? Again, I think we have to look at what we do have here in Boulder City. Although we are in the same labor market, it does not mean that we can't attract people here for different reasons. And to say, well, we need to pay our employees the same as Las Vegas, or Clark County, or Henderson, or North Las Vegas, I don't think that's realistic. I think we need to look at the needs we have here in Boulder City and base their salaries on that. And we can't worry that we're going to lose employees, because that is likely to occur. We then need to prepare to be able to train people, to have positions where we are going to have individuals that can train others as they come in, and policies that are in place so that a new person comes in can get up to speed very quickly. But we're not able to pay the highest salaries in the region for this, and I think we need to look very closely at that as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just go backwards. It's much easier with them.
So it's still my turn now?
Still your turn. This next question is, public trust in all government is historically low across generational groups in the United States. In Boulder City, we hear us versus them when having discussions about anything, the election, the pool, the off-highway vehicles, historic district, or controlled growth. How can we get back trust and confidence in our local government?
Well, I think a good starting point would be to get rid of Facebook completely, just ban it from there. But seriously, I think a problem always comes in when you have people who are not willing to listen to the other side. This is a small community. I think most all of us have the same goals, the same values that we love about this community, and yet we always seem to have some type of name calling going back and forth. The no-growthers, let's call them cave people. These types of things are not beneficial for our community. But I also think that this city has for years failed its residents in being transparent, open, and honest about what's happening here. We have seen projects that have placed the city in debt happen years ago and still continuing to this time. We are still paying for those mistakes. And they were not adequately explained to the people here in Boulder City. And as you look over the history with our controlled growth ordinance, with the restrictions on money being spent from the capital improvement fund, with the restrictions of selling an acre of land or more than an acre of land, requiring a vote of the people, those were all in response to the citizens here saying to our city leadership, you are not listening to us. And that we should not have. We need city leadership that does listen, that understands what the people in Boulder City want from their government. That's something that I intend to do. I want to represent what the people want here, not what outside influences want, not what a few people want if they're going to make a lot of money off some project that the taxpayers wind up paying for, whether they pay for it at the time or they pay for it later on. We need to have more openness in our government. That will bring trust back to this community. There are some steps that are being taken towards that. I don't believe they're enough. I think very oftentimes we're putting window dressing on some of these problems. I think that it's up to the city council, any member that serves on city council, to be available, to be able to answer the questions, and to be able to listen to what people are telling them, and not just from special interests that come in and make pitches to the city that if we use up some of your resources, they're going to make some money off of it, and the citizens are going to wind up paying for that for decades. Thank you.
So let me first clarify one thing on debt, just so everybody's clear on this, because sometimes when Mr. McManus talks about debt incurred in the past, I think without clarifying, you think that it's this administration that incurred that debt. When I got on city council in 2011, we had 4 major debts totaling $100 million. And since that time, we've reduced debt by over $60 million. So we only have one remaining debt left. And this question is not about that, but I just want to be crystal clear about that, because I think, again, transparency is important when we're talking about crystal clear communication. You know that's been one of my 5 major vision statements as the mayor, and we're better than ever at crystal clear communication and transparency. We can always be better. There's no question that that's the hardest job that we have in the city, is communicating not only with ourselves, with outside agencies, with the citizens, but we are better than ever, and we're increasingly better because we have these new positions, including the communications manager, and we've made a concerted effort to do that with our citizens. There's also no substitute for honesty and integrity, and I wish that everyone in public service positions had that. We know that that's not true, and that goes from the national level down to the local level, but we have to have people that are honest and that stand behind what they say and do what they say. And I believe I have done that on city council. Let me get to the us versus them mentality, though, because I think, the one word that Councilman Harhay often uses is comedy, not comedy, like, ha ha ha, but comity. That means cooperation, and it means working together, and it means doing it in a spirit of togetherness and unity. And that's one of the reasons that I ran for city council in 2011, is because I saw a lot of people trying to divide the community, a lot of incivility in our public dialogue, and that's not okay. You can disagree with people, but you can do it in a way that it shows respect. And so instead of having ad hominem personal attacks, name-calling, shouting people down, making you feel like you can't participate in the process, or if you're on the other side of the issue, we're gonna exclude you from the political process. That is not what America is about. That's not what Boulder City is about. I've written an article in the past about E pluribus unum, out of many one, and that's what our country's about. It's not your dollar bill. It's about bringing all these divergent ideas and ethnic backgrounds and differences of opinion, and how we, the people that, the worldviews that we have, and finding solutions, finding common ground, working together, and that's what I'm about, and that's what Boulder City is about. That's what we need to be about going forward. That's how we'll find solutions.
Good question. Public trust. I like this one. Certainly don't have any public trust any higher than our level here, local government. But it's funny because what I do see some public trust out there. I see lots of public trust. In fact, people tell me all year long, Rich, I have no idea what's going on in city council, but that's why I elected you. I just trust you to be doing a good thing up there and taking care of business for us. To me, that's the public trusting me. And it's been the greatest honor of my professional life is being trusted by the public. So, say about it is, you know, our government, one of the shockers for me when I first got on council 4 years ago was how transparent government really is. And this is what I tell my children, is that anything that your government is doing, every dollar that we spend, every document that we read, every single thing that we get to be privileged to see, you get to see as well. I get the same exact packet that everybody else gets to prepare for city council meetings. Every single shred of information is right there. I think if you were to ask someone like Judith Duchesne about public trust, she's very well read. She's at every single meeting. She knows the packet inside and out, probably better than some council members sometimes. And I think she would say that, you know, it's a very public institution. And here in Boulder City, we have that public trust. The us versus them mentality, I think it's a few people saying that. I don't find that with the majority of people. I think that 99.9% of us agree on most issues. It's a very unique town in that way. It's very courteous. We're a very courteous community. My dad pointed out to me a couple days ago that, you know, in Boulder City, everybody stops for their neighbor. When somebody crosses the road in Boulder City, you can trust that they're going to stop. When I'm crossing the road with my kids or my dog, and there's a car coming, they're going to stop for you. That's who we are. We can trust each other. We can trust the public. The folks that are on city council and running for council are trustworthy individuals. They're here amongst the community. They're not removed. They're not sitting in some office in Washington, D.C. They're sitting right here. I'm at my office on Main Street in Boulder City all day long, and then I'm at my house, and then I'm at the school, and then I'm at the baseball field. So there's no hiding from the public. Before I got on city council, that's what I did. I took care of my family, I took care of my business. After this short time that I'm on city council, I'll go back to doing the same thing. So, I don't know, if public trust, us versus them, I don't see it as much as maybe some of the smaller groups in town see it. And I think there's vocal people that make that an issue more than it really is. Like I said, I have a lot of people that have come up to me and said, I have no idea what the budget is, but just go do a good job with that budget. And that to me is public trust. So I thank you all for that public trust, anyone that has that trust in myself.
So I don't think there's any denying that there is a deficit of public trust in our local government right now. And if we are going to address that issue, you have to start by talking about it. So how did we get here? Well, it was only 4 years ago in 2015 that the city of Boulder City was found guilty by a unanimous court decision of entering a strategic lawsuit against public participation. We sued our own citizens and we lost. It cost you, the taxpayer, over $800,000, but more so, it cost the public its confidence in the local government. When we have elected officials who shirk accountability and who take a cavalier attitude towards being found in violation of ethic laws and open meeting laws, that erodes public trust. So what do we do about fixing that? We need to increase access to information. I have a track record of providing meaningful platforms to people whose voices are often unheard. The work that I do with my partner Svetlana, we bring artists and performers from all over the world without the benefit of giant record labels or huge booking agencies, and we bring them right here into Southern Nevada and create cultural events. You know, that work has been recognized by numerous publications in the region, and just this last month, we were recognized by our own Congresswoman for our dedication to uniting Southern Nevada through music and through community engagement. And it's that last part, community engagement, that means the most to me. We need to make sure that we are increasing access, and we can start right now by filming all of our committee meetings, filming all of the commission meetings, filming our town hall meetings. We need to provide closed captionings on those videos so that the deaf and hard of hearing in our community can have greater access to our information. We need to start publishing and broadcasting all of our city council meetings along with their agenda items on social media so that we can create new avenues for the next generation so that they can get involved. That is what is most important. And failure to do that will fail to restore that public trust that we are lacking. And I feel of any of the candidates up here tonight, my experience shows that I am the most qualified to help restore the public's confidence in our governmental system. Thank you.
All right.
problem, and we need some changes in a new culture of transparency. Every time I look in the paper or Facebook or have a conversation with a resident when I'm going door to door or standing in the grocery store wearing my button, I'm asked to clarify some piece of information that they've heard. Is there going to be excess recreation money from the pool bond for another golf course? Why did it jump to 41? Really? Are the developers really running this show with respect to the historic district and control growth? Why do only 3 incumbents running for office get credit for saving the Boulder building? There are 6 sides to every story. For example, there's a theory based on an image that is based on a 16-inch water pipe with fire hydrants that look like, and also what look like electric boxes. There's a video from a 2016 workshop discussing the development of the 4 corners. So there is a belief that underlying our current affairs is a plot to build around the I-11 interchange, even if it's currently off the land management plan. That developers are chomping at the bit and there's a lot of money to be made. One side denies such allegations and the other is sure that these are not theories at all, but reality. There's a speculation and conspiracy theory, and there's character assassination. Some are called cave people, and for those who don't know, that means citizens against virtually everything. And others are accused of making backroom deals. Even the us's have us's and them, right? Okay, I wish that I could be a fly on the wall of all of the meetings of all of these minds. So the solution, like my colleagues have said, is transparency and a change of face. How about releasing those contracts and documents that answer these issues when they come up? I know for a fact that our Director of Communication follows the Facebook pages because I wrote something months ago that she responded to in about 30 seconds. It's time to get signs and press releases on the issue of the water line out to the El Dorado Valley. How about publishing a contract so we know what's going on? And a perfect example, someone told my husband, who told me that he's working on the water line and it's for the solar fields and other development. Someone told someone who told me. When these come up, I think it would be in the best interest to have easily available those documents which address these issues. Signed contract. How about a contract, a paper trail for the 16-inch water line? I would add that I support a Q&A section of the website that allows residents to ask questions regarding circulating theories. We need confidence in leadership and a sense of us, not us versus them.
Well, a lot has been said, and I don't have time to respond to all of them, but what I would say to you is that you do need to do your research, and with respect to this water line, if you want a copy of a detailed description and history on that water line, go over to my table afterwards and give me your email address and I will email you the information. I didn't bring it with me tonight. And all of these other issues that I've brought up, there are 2 sides to every story. So you need to do your research and check it out and talk to the source, because it's very difficult to counteract all the misinformation that is out there. But I think it has been clearly stated out there that there's division in our community. And it's not just in our community, we see it throughout our nation. In fact, I've heard it several times on national television that pundits are saying they've never seen our country so divided since the Civil War, which is really saying something when you consider the Vietnam era. I don't know if you were here for our last forum, but we were asked to pick leaders that we admired, and I picked Abraham Lincoln and Nelson Mandela, because these great men had something in common, and that was the ability to reach out and work with their opponents and their adversaries. Both of them were very successful at it. Of course, Abraham Lincoln was president during the Civil War, and Nelson Mandela was elected president and was trying to prevent a civil war. I think we need to learn something from these remarkable men. There are so many good things going on in Boulder City. We should be working together on these things, not at odds with each other. Historic preservation should not be controversial. Differing ideas are good. It can create synergy so that working out differences and coming up with the solution that all can agree on is the best solution. Economic development is another area that's very important for the future of our town. Just look at the past couple of weekends, Spring Jam and the Dillinger Block, bringing all these visitors to town with our local people, supporting local businesses, so that we're bringing additional revenue into town. We need to quit rehashing all of these past mistakes or perceived mistakes. We need to look ahead to the great opportunity in Boulder City for ideas and projects that we can unite around. My campaign slogan has been finding common ground to build a positive future for Boulder City. I really believe that we need to do this. We need to do this if as a community we're going to move forward, and if we don't, I believe it is at our peril.
Thank you. Our final question, we'll start with Rich, go out, and then James will go out. Mix it up a little. Okay, the last question we have before I give you each 5 minutes to issues of your choice. We have all heard your views about the same half dozen issues important to Boulder City today. What would you predict could be a future big issue that we haven't come to grips with? How would you side on that one?
Thanks for the question, and I don't think we've heard, no offense, everybody's positions on a half dozen important issues, and I think that it's important that over the next 4 weeks or so until the election that we get out there and ask these candidates what are their positions on these different issues. So the question is, can you predict a future big issue? And I've given this one a lot of thought, and I can't really predict any one specific big issue, but I'll tell you that I think it'll probably revolve around growth. That word growth that we hear so much, and it's such an interesting word in our community. The ironic thing to me is that I think 99.9% of us all want the same amount of growth, very, very little, and that's what we treasure about Boulder City. But I think it will come up. I think it already has. You look at this Hoover Dam Gateway project, big elephant in the room, and everybody wants to turn this, not everybody, but very few people want to turn that into a political issue. Just simply is not that at all. Really follow the council meetings and the economic development meetings about that. That was turned into a bigger issue. We've had proposals from developers to build thousands of homes. I think this question is going to come around growth. I think the big issue we'll tackle in the future will be around growth. How much and where and who's for it, who's against it. It's so interesting to hear people paint me or paint other candidates with a brush that they're pro-growth or anti-growth or no growth. It's just, it doesn't make any sense to me because I really think that we all agree that the amount that we need to grow. This growth control ordinance that we put in place many years ago is brilliant. It's nothing short of brilliant that we have a cap on the amount of homes that we can build. I sell real estate, and that's my number one talking point, is we're small, we've always been small, we're always going to be small. So vote for candidates that understand that and that are not supported, or that are not supporting, trash talking growth, and really understand what growth means to this city. What's a healthy amount of growth? You're going to run into candidates that are absolutely against every form of growth. Other candidates that understand a healthy level of growth. So I think that'll be the big issue that we tackle moving forward. We'll always have to tackle it in this town. We do have very valuable resources in the El Dorado Valley. Nobody said it best to me ever in the last 4 years than Eric Lundgaard, when he said the El Dorado Valley is very valuable and that land is sought after by developers, and it's even more valuable, completely undeveloped in 30 years. Think about that. That just has stuck with me ever since he said that to me. They are looking, of course, developers are looking at land that we have hold on to that land. I think that's the approach. So I think that's what we're going to be looking at over the next, in the future, as our biggest issue will be revolving around growth.
So future big issues, we don't have a crystal ball, but I'm going to make a not so bold prediction. It's not too much different than Councilman Schumann's, and that is that there will continue to be attempts to create residential development in the Colorado Valley. And I say this, I'm going to talk a little bit about history, but I think it's off the radar issue for some people because a lot of people don't know, a few of you in this room do know, that the land by Railroad Pass and stringing down the mountains there is in the unincorporated county. And so let's jump back in time to when our city was first incorporated in 1959. From that time going forward to 1995, we were only 33 square miles in size. And when I first moved to Boulder City in 1978, certainly wasn't in 59, but the 60s and especially the 70s saw rapid growth within those 33 square miles. But there was still the vast majority of what you see out in El Dorado Valley, all these expansive areas by the dry lake and whatnot, that was unincorporated. That was federal land in the unincorporated county. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about my dad, who for 28 years on the county commission fought to make sure that the rapid growth didn't come over the hill because developers were still trying to develop that land out there that was not part of Boulder City at the time. And so he helped to spearhead an El Dorado Valley Advisory Commission in the late 80s and in the early 90s, and Eric Lundgaard can attest to that because he was on that for a time. After years of work, the recommendation was made to have the federal government sell 168 square miles in 1995 to the city of Boulder City for a nominal price. And he also fought to make sure that the vast majority of that, something like 135 square miles, was set aside for conservation, easement, and recreation. So if that had not happened in those late 80s and early 90s, and when it happened in 1995, you would already see development in all of the El Dorado Valley similar to what you have in Las Vegas and the greater Las Vegas area. That push has extended forward. In 2007 and 2008, Larry Canarelli's group was proposing 7,000 homes. My father fought against that. Since I've been there and on city council, I've continued to fight against that, and people don't really realize that that's happening still, but they've been trying to annex areas out in that unincorporated county into Henderson. The county is releasing massive areas in its ring around the valley to developers, and we're continually fighting against that. So it's not too big of a prediction to know that that's going to continue to happen, and I will continue to fight against that and continue to enforce our slow growth ordinance.
One of the problems with predicting is making sure you have enough information. And I think to go back to what this question was about, was if we were to find one future big issue, what would it be? And I believe that one of the things that this community has not done a good job of is recognizing the unique position we're in with our land leases from primarily El Dorado Valley for solar energy production. That brings in about a third of our budget to this community. I don't know that you would find a community elsewhere in Nevada or in many states of the country that have that type of benefit for bringing in additional dollars, which keeps our property taxes low, used to keep our utility rates low. That's the type of benefit that we really need to take good care of and have an understanding of how that benefits our community. I've been recommending since I was elected to council 2 years ago that we account for that money separately so we know what we are paying for with that money. Now, Mr. Woodbury has said, well, I want to take that money out of the general fund. I don't want to take it out of the general fund. I want to make sure we understand how we're spending that money so that if in the future that money were not to be available to us, we would know what we're not going to be able to pay for. We don't know where technology is going to go in energy production in 10 or 15 or 20 years, and many of those contracts are written for 30, 40, 50 years. We are becoming very dependent on that money, and it goes, 80% of it goes into the general fund now and gets mixed in with all of our other tax revenues, that sort of thing. We need to have an understanding of where we're budgeting that money rather than just mixing it in. The law that governs that money is that 20% goes to our capital improvement fund. The citizens were convinced a few years ago to then allow the council to drain money out of the capital improvement back into the general fund. 20% of the money is designated for the general fund, but 60% of it is up to city council to determine the use of it. And I don't believe we're doing a good job in identifying the particular projects that we're looking at. Mr. Woodbury has mentioned the fact that the land out there in El Dorado Valley was obtained. It was obtained, but I think the reason is slightly different. The desert tortoise is an endangered species, and the BLM was telling developers in Las Vegas years ago that if you continue to threaten that habitat, they are going to stop that growth. So much of that land, as was said earlier, has gone into conservation area, and that's what we're responsible for taking care of here in Boulder City. Thank you.